Hey guys, I am recording this video for those of you that were not able to be there during our launch a few weeks ago. So this is our 9.3 case challenge, which is the Great Wolf Lodge. Our challenge this time really encourages you guys to use critical thinking as you complete this challenge. So when we talk about critical thinking, what I really want you to think about is what questions do you need to get answered before you answer a question? So if someone poses something to you, a question, a challenge, maybe asks something of you, what do you need to figure out first? So you can answer those questions by thinking about what data can you find to validate your opinion, or what evidence did you get that tells you that? So during this challenge, you are going to make a decision based on what you believe Great Wolf Lodge should do. And I'm going to introduce that to you in a second. But I want you to really think about how are you going to support your decision in this challenge. I'm going to skip through some of these slides, but what I do want to talk about is the challenge itself. So the challenge question is, which approach should Great Wolf Lodge take to achieve its goal? Should they go with a buffet or a menu sit-down restaurant for their new dining option? So when we think about a buffet, we think about, first of all, what does Great Wolf Lodge do? So I'll actually show you kind of before we dive into that, what Great Wolf Lodge is if you are not familiar. So Great Wolf Lodge is, they like to consider themselves like a cruise ship on land is what they say. So it is a resort. It's in Kansas City, Kansas, but there's locations all over the country where families come to stay. There's a huge indoor water park, as you can see. There are hotel rooms that have themes. Sometimes there's bunk beds or fun things for kids. There's lots of restaurants, different kinds of activities. There's an arcade center. So Great Wolf Lodge itself is really focused on making sure families have a good time. So when we think about that, I want you to think maybe younger kids and then their parents that are obviously with them. So how does that affect our decision? Well, Great Wolf Lodge wants to know, should they offer another buffet or another sit-down restaurant where you could order off of a menu? And your decision is going to be based on which one do you think is going to be better for families, for both the parents and the kids in this case. So I want you to consider a few things. When it comes to a buffet, something we talked about in class is what are the pros and cons of a buffet? And some of the students said, for parents, they don't have to worry if their kid's a picky eater or, making sure that the kids kind of sit still at a sit-down table and order from the waiter or waitress. They just get to go choose whatever they want and then rush back to the pool or the water park or whatever they were doing before. So it kind of gets rid of the making kids kind of sit down for an hour or so at a restaurant when really they want to go play. And for parents, it allows lots of options and different varieties of food. Now, a couple of the cons we talked about is sometimes people have allergies or things they're concerned about that might be mixing with other foods, and that's something to be really cognizant of in a buffet. Also, if you do have a really picky eater, on one hand, do parents want to spend a set amount of money on a child that's only going to eat one thing from a buffet when they could order something from a menu that they would eat more of? So just some things to consider. As far as a sit-down restaurant, some pros we discussed were, it depends on the type of food that's offered. So if the menu is something the whole family likes, could be a really great option to have some family time. Some cons, again, were if you've got a big family and it's tough to get all your kids to kind of sit still in one place, especially when they know they could be off doing more fun things, it might be more difficult for some families. So again, these are just things to consider, but I want you also to think of your own reasons why you might choose buffet versus a menu restaurant, and you're going to do research to decide some of those things. Other things we looked at is these are the options currently that are at the Great Wolf Lodge. So there are these 3 options plus these 4. You'll have access to the slide deck where you can look through, and also I encourage you to go to Great Wolf Lodge's website and look through the type of restaurants they already have so that the suggestion you're making isn't one that Great Wolf Lodge already offers. We talked about Great Wolf Lodge being known as a cruise ship on land because when you think of a cruise ship, if you're in the middle of the ocean, you can't get off the boat to go do something. That's what Great Wolf Lodge wants you to think about is once you're there at their hotel, they don't want you to have to leave for any reason. Everything you could need is right there on that resort. Your job is to think about what would make the most sense for families with young children who are visiting for fun, relaxation, and convenience. Again, what do families value? Well, parents, on one hand, want easy and stress-free, but they still want to have a nice time. Kids are full of energy. They don't want to wait long. Eating with kids can be messy and time-consuming. And families are paying for convenience and the experience, not just the food. Here is where your role comes in. The tool we're using in this case is called a decision tree, and this is something I would like you to complete today. And this will be offered to you on a Google slide that your teacher shared with you. And it looks like this. So on your decision tree, essentially what you'll do is option 1 is a buffet style restaurant. Option 2 is going to be your menu style restaurant. And you are going to list all the possible outcomes, or sometimes we call them consequences, for choosing this option. These can be positive, negative, or neutral. So a positive consequence could be it's less time spent at a restaurant. Kids get to go back to having fun at a buffet. That could be a positive outcome. And then over here will be your menu option. And what I want you to do is you're going to look through Great Wolf Lodge's website to really pull some data and evidence to prove why that might be an outcome for that decision. And again, your teacher will provide you with some research materials that you can do specifically to look into that decision more. And finally, your deliverable is going to be creating a presentation, identifying which dining approach you've chosen. And why is that? What evidence did you find to come to that conclusion? Your presentation could look a lot of different ways, and your teacher will share with you what they want it to look like. That is all I have for you today. Please reach out if you have any questions.